Connecticut East This Week is supported by SCAD. This September, SCAD is partnering with Philomena's Restaurant of Waterford to promote Sober September. For every mocktail purchase, the proceeds will benefit SCAD's programs, supporting individuals and families on their path to recovery. Visit Philomena's or you can give directly. Learn more and donate at scad.org/ways to give. It's all change at the top at Subase New London as they hold a change of command ceremony. And we sit down with Captain Ken Curtin, the outgoing base commander, about his 4 years in charge. Plus we take a look at other stories making the headlines from around the region. This is Connecticut East This Week. Hello, I'm Brian Scott-Smith. It's that time again for a change of command at Subase New London as it welcomes its 54th commanding officer. The change of command ceremony happens every 4 years and this time occurred on September 26th, and we had the opportunity to sit down with the 53rd commanding officer, Captain Ken Curtin, to talk about his time in charge, the challenges he faced as COVID started to ease, and where he goes from here, looking forward to his future and ultimately retirement from the service. Captain, ever so many thanks for having us along. We are sat in your very nice office here on Subbase, but it won't be your office for much longer. It's 4 years is up for you, and in the tradition of the Navy, it's time for a change of command. You came on at a point which was probably one of the most challenging that somebody can ever take over. I mean, being in the Navy and obviously being a submariner, those are challenging roles, but this must have been just one of those other challenging moments in your career because, of course, COVID, the base was already looking at certain protocols, but you had to keep it all going.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity here to share some of the experiences in the past 4 years. It's been my honor to be in this position and to serve the country and the people at Submarine Base. So, right, when I came in, we were really towards the tail end of COVID. My predecessor had put in a lot of the policies and procedures in place in order to maintain our military efficiency of the base, to make sure we don't miss our mission, right? And our mission is the same as been for 100 years, to send the combat-ready submarines downriver and to train the next generation of submarine professionals at our Naval Submarine School. And so my predecessor and the team here had put in, at the beginning of the pandemic and as it got to its height, had put in the processes in place to protect this population so we can execute that mission. And they did a fantastic job. We didn't miss a single deployment day, didn't miss a single underway, and all the classes kept going. What I had to do when I came in was I had to understand what was in place, and then how do you recover? How do you come out of that? How do you get back to, I think the terminology everyone used was some new sense of normalcy, right? What is that new routine? So that was really the challenge I undertook as COVID started winding down and protocols started being rolled back. How do we get back to some normal operations? And there was definitely some challenges doing that. A lot of people, we had gotten used to this separated work environment, different shifts, a lot of telework, a lot of working from home and meetings online. And I'm a big believer that there is a lot of value in in-person meetings where you can read each other's body language, you can talk to people, you can have conversations, and quite frankly, most of the real work gets done in the sidebars before and after the meetings. So it was really important to me that once the protocols and the stuff from COVID were starting to wind down, to get us back into that routine. I think one of the best things, if anything good came out of COVID, was it brought the Navy into the 21st century with respect to video teleconferencing and things like that. We didn't do a lot of that before. It was unheard of, really. It was a small amount. And so now we have this great new technology that we're able to use, but you don't want to use it too much. So we had to walk our way back out, right? There was definitely some challenges during the pandemic. We have 1,500 to 2,000 young initial session sailors up the hill. How do we keep them safe? How do we feed them with all the protocols? And so there were some challenging times from the galley on base that feeds all those sailors 365 days a year they feed them. And so how do we do that? And we got really good at putting to-go meals together and delivering them to all the barracks and making sure we kept everybody safe. But then we had to figure out how to get back to serving them in line. So it was challenging, but I think we're at a new thing where we now do a lot of hybrid, where we still have those in-person meetings for all the value they add. but there's a lot of flexibility that allow us to do things remotely, which then is just a more efficient way of doing certain things.
You're like a little city within a larger city. But of course, you did have to restrict personnel not only leaving but coming on, because obviously that was one of the protocols to try and make sure that COVID didn't get out of hand. That in itself must have been, again, a challenge, because the personnel are used to having a certain amount of liberty, being able to go off base, and then suddenly being told, hey, no, this can't be the situation at the moment. And then, of course, submarines coming back, and then those submariners coming off, and what do they do, sort of thing. So again, lots of moving parts.
There were lots of moving parts. Like I said, the team was in place, putting them together before I got here, right? And so you talk about sailors are used to going home at the end of the day and going out and doing things. And so while there was a lot, we weren't doing anything too different than what society was doing. And so the rules that we were putting in place really followed right along with whatever the state or the federal government were putting in place. So while it was different for everybody, it was a shared difference, right? It wasn't that, the military is doing something very, very different than everybody else. I think there were a few caveats to that, like as you talked about the submarines, right? So when we deploy a submarine downriver, we need to make sure they're ready when they leave. Right, we can't be, sick, have a whole submarine sick on the way, right? So the Navy had put some protocols in place, and let's say we were going to deploy on a certain day, we would actually bring those sailors into the ship a couple weeks early and kind of sequester them, if you would, to the ship, away from the family. So that's challenging, because you're already gone for 6 months, and now potentially you're gone for 6.5 months, right? And so those were some challenges. Those are things the Navy did. Sailors responded well. The sailors understand the mission. They understand what we do here, what they signed up for in the Navy. And so that was one of the ways that the submarines managed that, was let's bring everyone in a little early. We'll keep them on the ship a number of days ahead of time. Make sure nobody's sick. Make sure we get through the incubation period, whatever it was, and then we can get underway and be ready to execute the mission on day one. So there were some things different. But on the whole, what we did here was no different than what was being done at the state and local levels. So the sailors really responded well. You had to come to work, and then you had to go straight home. You couldn't go out to dinner. You couldn't go here. You couldn't do that. And for the most part, the sailors all responded about as well as most civilians did.
And of course, during all of this as well, again, just like the rest of society, life had to go on. There were things that had to be done here at Subase New London. Talk to us about some of those things, because there was the rebuilding of Pier 32. I mean, that's a very big project that couldn't be stopped. Just talk to us just briefly about those.
Right. We need to continue to maintain and upgrade the infrastructure of the base in order to ensure our military readiness to execute the mission, right? And this base has been here since 1868. It's been a submarine base since 1916. So we're talking, 100 and almost 110 years of submarine excellence right here at this base. And so as you get that old, just like us, we need to replace things. So some of those projects you mentioned, they were in the works already before COVID came. And so we had to work with the contractors that were hired. And how are we going to manage those contracts? Thankfully, most of the things that you talked about are outside construction work, so it made it a little bit easier. When we were rebuilding Pier 32, that's all out on the water. The contractors took all the precautions required by the state and federal law. So as far as the mission impact on the base, it was just making sure that we all understood the precautions we were taking, and we were able to just execute the mission and get that done. So yeah, Pier 32 was a huge success story for us as we modernize our infrastructure. The other one that went on all through COVID is the microgrid and our modernization of our electrical system to give us the ability here at Subbase to what we would call island off the base if we ever need to. On a day-to-day basis, we are hooked up to Groton Utilities, and we buy our electricity just like anyone else would. But the project that we did, it was like a 15-year project with lots of different funding sources, and it basically gave me brand new generators as well as a microgrid to control them. And I now have the ability to completely island off the base if necessary, whether it's for a natural disaster or some untoward event that happens out in town and Groton Utilities or Eversource will be down for a prolonged period of time. I have the ability that I can run this base and execute the mission almost indefinitely now with this new upgrade. And that all happened during COVID as well.
Let's talk about some lighter things,
sure,
because that's very deep, but it was a big part of, obviously, your command here. The AUKUS project, which is ongoing, and having Australian naval officers officers here training. Talk to us a little bit about that, because I suppose in a way it's a bit of a first, and obviously Subbase New London got to do it.
So AUKUS is extremely important to national security. It's a very important trilateral agreement signed between the UK, Australia, and the United States. But it really is not the first time Subase New London has been home to foreign submarine and naval officers. We continuously have UK sailors here going through some of our schoolhouses and being trained. So that's not uncommon. We have UK sailors that serve on some of our active submarines today. So we've always had a very close relationship with the UK when it comes to the submarine force. Bringing Australia in, we've always had a close relationship with Australia. Most of their students and the interaction happen in the West Coast, Pearl Harbor, just for proximity of where everything's at. But this is the first time we actually brought them into the nuclear propulsion fold and bringing them in. And so having them here is fantastic for Australia. It's fantastic for the United States, for our partnerships and our allies. I talked about the UK, obviously AUKUS in Australia, but we also have partners from South America that are here every summer, and we work submarine tactics with them. So having foreign international sailors on subbase is not unique. It's not totally uncommon. But having the Australians here was a first for Australia. It's been going pretty well.
I was going to say, because they want to advance to nuclear submarines, and it is a first really for America as well to be sort of like doing what they're doing with regards to another allied nation. How did the Australians take to, because it's always fun to have people come and visit. There's all the cultural differences and everything that goes along. I mean, how did the Australians react?
They've reacted great. We've had a number of social events, a number of meetings with their senior officers, as well as the commanding officer of submarine school has. And then we have a lot of social events, and they've just melded right in. It is not uncommon for me to be walking or driving around the base today and just see Australian Navy uniforms walking around the base. They take part like a regular U.S. sailor, being in all the places we're at, doing all the things. And so I think it was a really good transition last year when we started. And all the events I've been at have been fantastic. All the feedback I've gotten from the sailors, from senior officials, has been fantastic. They appreciate being here. They appreciate what they learn. On some personal notes, some have never been to New England before. And so they really love it here, and they've gotten out to explore what we have in southeastern Connecticut and beyond, Boston and New York and Hartford. And so they've had a great opportunity to see some of America and see what we do while they're here. And so I think it's been very good so far, and they've responded very well.
We would, of course, be remiss if we did not mention the fact that it is the Navy's 250th anniversary this year. Happy birthday, obviously, US Navy. That in itself must be exciting to be part of that, because you've actually hit some quite pivotal moments. I mean, nobody obviously wants to have COVID again, but, you came in then, you've got 250 years. Of course, America celebrates its 250th in 2026. Talk to us about that, because that must be a very proud moment.
It is. I think I've coming to this base to command this base here for the last 4 years. I started here 36 years ago. In 1986, I walked on this base as a young sailor, barely knowing what a submarine was. And I've spent my entire career in the submarine force. And then being able to come back here towards the very end of my career and command the base and try and give back to the base everything the Navy and the submarine force has given me. I was 18 when I joined the Navy, and here I am in my late 50s, raised an entire family. And the Navy has been very, very good to me and my family. It's a challenging life. There's lots of sacrifice you do, but it's been great. And so being able to be in command here for these 4 years and hopefully give back and impact has been fantastic. And then, some of the things you talked about, how do you go back to normalcy after COVID, right? A never before seen pandemic, at least in any of our lifetime. How do you get back to normal? And what is normal? What does that look like? Then you get AUKUS. So you get this first time ever trilateral agreement welcoming in the Australian Navy into Subase New London, the submarine capital of the world, and bringing them into the fold. And then you get the Navy's 250th birthday. And all those things that you mentioned, just sometimes I have to pinch myself and that I'm lucky to have this opportunity to lead the sailors here and just lead Subbase for these 4 years. And I'm very fortunate and very humbled that I've had the opportunity.
Of course, during this time as well, again, we would be remiss in not mentioning this, the world's first nuclear submarine, which of course is at the museum here, USS Nautilus, underwent a refurbishment during your time. Talk to us about that, because it's a big attractor to this part of the world. And of course, it is, again, a unique submarine, the very first nuclear submarine in the world.
Absolutely. So that museum is one of, if not the biggest drawers down here in southeastern Connecticut. And it tells the story of not only nuclear power, naval nuclear propulsion program, it tells the story of the submarine force. From the birth through our really formative years of World War II, which is where the submarine force really earned its stripes, all the way up into now. Having the Nautilus here is a huge, not only attraction for the southeastern Connecticut, but it really drives home the submarine capital of the world. That the very first nuclear submarine, and we have it here. We are maintaining it. We have it open for the public to see, to share our story, to tell what we do. And then the fact that the Navy was able to find the funds and find it important enough in this austere environment we're in, find it important enough to maintain that ship in a condition that can tell the story of the submarine force, nuclear power, and the Navy for the next 30 years, I think that's incredible. I think it shows a lot of foresight for the Navy to be able to say that is important. We can't let all the history go. And to find the money to take it and put it in a dry dock and spend a year and a half and maintain it. And because it sits in the water there, and metal and water don't go well together. So I think it's hugely important. And then we didn't do it alone. We had partners. Mystic Seaport helped with some of the teak decking on the top side. So again, it was an opportunity for us to bring the community in to share in something that really is a part of Groton. The history there really tells a big history of Groton. You have all the early revolutionary history here, but I really think the past 70 years, electric boat, the submarine base, the Nautilus, that has really been a big part of southeastern Connecticut. So I think it was fantastic that the Navy had the foresight to find the funds to make sure we can continue to tell that story for the next generation.
As we said, 4 years for you in command of Subase New London. Has it gone quick?
It has gone quick. 4 years is the longest time I've been at any tour of duty in my almost 40 years. Next month will be 40 years of service for me. 4 years is the longest I've ever been anywhere. But it has gone quick because it's been so enjoyable. I'd never say easy. It's challenging, right? These jobs are challenging. Different challenges every day, challenges you never thought. You alluded to earlier, saying it's almost like a small city. It's like a mayor of a small city, right? And you have all those same problems and challenges. So every day is new and interesting, but it has been one of the most rewarding jobs and opportunities I've had. Obviously, for a sailor, command at sea is the pinnacle. You take a warship to sea and you command that going forth, doing the nation's bidding. That's number one. Nothing will ever top that. But I'll tell you what, this comes a pretty darn close second. I've had the opportunity to impact so many things, so many people and their families, and just try and make their lives somehow better, some little bit. What can I do on the base to improve something that makes the life of a young spouse and children who are here by themselves when they're sailors at sea for 5 months? How can I just make their life a little bit easier? It doesn't have to always be a big major thing. And I've really tried to focus my effort on that. There are other commanders, captains on the base that worry about getting the submarines fixed. They worry about training the new sailors up the hill. I really tried to put a lot of emphasis and focus on taking care of the quality of life of the young sailors that are living in the barracks, really important to me, as well as the families. What can I do to make it better, easier, more support their needs when they're away from home? And it's gone fast because it's such a busy and interesting and challenging job.
As you look back at your 40 years, I believe you're a native of Yonkers, New York. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am. That's right.
Did you ever think that this boy from New York would have got to this point in his career?
Never. When I joined the Navy, I still remember the day I signed up for the Navy. I had done it without informing my then girlfriend I was going to go do it. I did it. Came home and told her. She was not happy. I said, 4 years and I'm out. This is easy. I'm going to get some schooling. Navy's going to send me to school and train me and teach me. Here I am 40 years later, thankfully married to that same girlfriend I had back then, raised 4 kids. You never know what the future holds. I try to tell the young sailors all the time to look for opportunities and then go get them. Because I don't think anyone's going to give you anything that's really worth it. You have to go out and find it and then get it and take it. And take action to make yourself better. And you just look for those opportunities. And the Navy has been full of opportunities for me. Not everything was great, but you have to go along. And I never would have thought I'd be here. I'm humbled that I'm here. The Navy has found fit to allow me to continue to serve.
As you hand over the reins, obviously, to the 54th incoming commanding officer of Subase New London, what's the future for you? What happens now for you?
I'm not quite retiring yet. I'm going to go and be the Chief of Staff for Undersea Warfighting Development Command, which is right here at Subase New London. We have one command with a one-star admiral, so I'm going to go be the Chief of Staff there for about 15 months. And then my time in the service will be coming to an end in 2027. There are some limitations. No matter how much you like doing what you're doing, there are some limitations. So I've got about another 2 years-ish to finish up in the Navy, and I'm going to do those here on Subbase working for the Admiral at UWDC.
So we don't lose you quite yet.
Not quite yet.
But then, I mean, what, travel and things after that?
It is time for my wife and I to do some travel. We've got some plans. We want to travel around the U.S. We definitely want to go spend some time in Europe. I've been there a few times on different tours. My wife's never had much opportunity. So we definitely want to spend some time in Europe, want to do some traveling around the U.S., want to go visit Alaska, and just spend time with our grandkids. That is the goal, that we've set ourselves up well, that I don't need a real high-pressure job when I'm done here. I can go do something if I want. I'm not going to sit around and do nothing, but definitely spend some quality time with the wife, the family, and the grandkids, and that's kind of what's next for us.
Final question to you. What's your outgoing piece of advice to the new incoming 54th commanding officer of Subbase?
That's a great question. It's going to be to, I guess, expect the unexpected. But what I learned when I got here very quickly is that the senior staff that is here, particularly the civilian staff, many of them have been here for 10, 15, 20, 25 years doing this job. They are as dedicated, if not more dedicated, than some of the sailors that are wearing the uniform every day. They do this for a living. This is their career. They love the Navy. And so what I would tell him is to engage those staff, challenge that staff, listen to their advice, because they have seen and done most of it before. And they will not steer you wrong. And then just remember our mission. It's two missions. Send combat-ready submarines downriver and train the next generation of sailors. And that's it. Everything we do, everything on this base has to tie to one of those two missions. And if you can't figure out how it ties to the mission, then you probably don't need to be doing it. Because as I said already before, in this environment, we don't have the extra money, time, people to do things that don't meet the mission. So remember what the mission is. Never forget that. Look to those civilian leaders that have been here for years and years and years, and then take care of the sailors. If you do those three things, you'll be successful.
Captain Ken Curtin, 53rd Commanding Officer of US Subase New London. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you very much.
Time now for a look at other stories making the headlines this week. A federal judge in Washington, D.C. granted a preliminary injunction request by Danish energy giant Ørsted to allow them to restart work on their Revolution Wind project off the coast of Rhode Island that President Trump halted a month ago. U.S. District Judge Royce Lambert issued the preliminary injunction that blocks the Trump administration's August stop work order from being enforced. Paul Whitescarver is the chairman of the Connecticut Port Authority, who helped redevelop State Pier in New London into a hub for Ørsted's project. He said things are already starting to happen.
The Windscilla, the install vessel, is positioning herself so she can go back to work, and the barge that takes the wind turbine components out to the install vessel is moved over and is accepting, I believe, wind turbine number 48. Put it out in the water for installation. So all good news.
Michael Passero is the mayor of the city of New London, where State Pier is based. He said the stoppage has been costly to Ørsted, the developer.
The problem was the damages that were mounting up. After a month or so, at $2 million or more a day, it was an incredibly expensive way to reevaluate public policy for wind development in general or this project specifically. At 80% completion.
Ørsted said in a statement they will continue to seek to work collaboratively with the U.S. administration and other stakeholders toward a prompt resolution, and will resume work on the offshore wind farm just as soon as possible and where safety allows. The Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, BOEM, that is part of the U.S. Department of the Interior and who issued the stop work order, said in a statement that they will continue to investigate prior permitting matters for all offshore wind projects to make sure they are in full compliance with applicable applicable laws. Boehm did not say whether they will seek to appeal the judge's decision to allow Revolution Wind to continue. The governors of Connecticut and Rhode Island said at a joint press conference they were pleased with the court's decision and to see the project resume. Revolution Wind is around 80% complete, and when finished, Ørsted says will help to power 350,000 homes throughout New England. A new survey shows Connecticut teachers continue to feel burned out heading into the new school year. Edwin J. Vieira from the Public News Service reports.
The back-to-school survey finds issues like staffing shortages, student behavior problems, and low wages keep teachers from being effective educators. New data from United Way show wages for almost every job in the state haven't kept up with the growing cost of living, but teachers in the state have been historically underpaid. Jocelyn Delancey with the Connecticut Education Association says this contributes to teachers feeling they don't have enough time for lesson prep and planning.
So we have our educators who not only have to work a job in the classroom, but then have to do significant other jobs to just pay the bills. That's time they could be spending with their family, or some going back to school and getting more credits, or looking at things for their classroom to do that are fun and exciting.
School district budget cuts don't help since they force teachers to do more with less. Delancey notes the state can fix this by increasing education funding and updating funding formulas to reflect inflation. Lawmakers increased special education funding in this year's legislative session, but it could be difficult for them to do the same for general education funding due to federal cuts. I'm Edwin J. Vieira.
U.S. Senator Richard Blumenthal addressed local and business leaders in eastern Connecticut recently and remotely from his office in Washington, D.C., as he voted with colleagues on measures to stop a close down of the government. In his 20-minute presentation, Blumenthal talked on a series of topics, including defense spending and how it had bipartisan support.
Job training, the apprenticeship program. I have worked successfully for additional appropriations that go to those purposes, which I think are absolutely essential. There's so many businesses in Connecticut. As I go around the state, what I hear most commonly is we're having trouble filling jobs because we can't find people with the right skills. And I think it is very important to the future of our state that we provide that kind of training.
He also aired his concerns over the number of veteran suicides in the state and the nation and how they might be affected by cuts at the VA.
I am deeply alarmed by the cuts in workforce that are occurring right now. We're bleeding workers at the VA because of the early forced retirements, the hiring freezes, cancellation of contracts. I think it will produce a major crisis in VA healthcare, will impact us in Connecticut and in eastern Connecticut, where we have a particularly high concentration of veterans.
Blumenthal did say he had managed to secure with bipartisan support tens of millions of dollars for the VA hospital in West Haven in the state for essential renovation and rebuilding of the aged facility. Blumenthal had been set to attend the business luncheon in person in Norwich, organized by the Chamber of Commerce of Eastern Connecticut. A vote has still yet to be reached by both parties to avoid a government shutdown at the end of September. And in CT News Junkie this week, a high-ranking state official says he's disappointed that the ACLU has filed a federal lawsuit claiming free speech violations after he and his department worked this summer to balance pedestrian and highway safety with residents' First Amendment rights. The ACLU Foundation of Connecticut filed a lawsuit in federal court recently on behalf of two local residents and their free speech rights, trying to halt the State Department of Transportation and Connecticut State Police from preventing protest signs on highway overpasses. The lawsuit claims that state police have repeatedly ordered protests to leave, claiming they are trespassing. Police have issued tickets and made arrests based on claims that signs distract drivers on highway overpasses in the greater New Haven area, the ACLU said. State Police Commissioner Ronell Higgins said he had engaged in several productive discussions about how to protect First Amendment rights of citizens whilst also guarding highway and pedestrian safety. The Department of Transportation said that state regulations prohibit unauthorized signs being fixed to structures like a fence or highway overpass, but it is not their responsibility to enforce those regulations. That's all from us for this edition. Do send us your questions and story ideas to the show via our website at connecticut-east.com or Facebook or Twitter at Connecticut East and on Instagram at Connecticut East This Week. And you can listen to the show again on our social platforms, on demand, and by asking your smart speaker to play Connecticut East This Week podcast. And please like, follow, and share on your social media too. I'm Brian Scott Smith. Thank you for listening.